Hi y'all, Andy Pandy here. I'm coming at you with Andy's Insight on Thursday here on Popcorn and Pork Rinds. Got my outline today, so bear with me if I look down a bit. I am still learning how to do this whole thing. So, for today, I've been thinking a lot about Independence Day. We just had it last week, and over the last few years, I've started to think about, should we, and I'm talking specifically to white people here, should we as white people continue to celebrate Independence Day as a day of independence? Because was it really that in the first place? So I think a good place to start when talking about this date is with the Native Americans, the first people that lived on this land. They were living in harmony with the land for, to our knowledge, a minimum of 15 to 20,000 years before the founding fathers showed up. That's according to the Smithsonian Institute. But actually, there's new archaeological evidence that is showing that they may have been here well longer than that. But that's a topic for another day that we'll definitely get into. So to start my discussion, I found an excerpt on a website called the Center for Native American Youth, and it was from an article written by Seth Henderson of the Aspen Institute. The article was called 10 Movements and Moments to Help You Confront Systemic Racism in America. And in it, Seth Henderson said, "We must not celebrate American ideals on the 4th of July without also acknowledging the reality that this land was colonized by means of dehumanizing, stealing from, enslaving, and committing cultural genocide against indigenous peoples. This includes the many battles against and forcible removal of Indian people from their traditional lands, like the Battle of Wounded Knee, the Battle of Steptoe, the Battle of Little Bighorn, Indian removal, and the Trail of Tears." So this leads directly into, sorry, I got distracted. Richard's doing something over there. So written into the document that we celebrate on the 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence, is the following statement from the Founding Fathers, just to give you an insight into how they viewed the Native Americans on the date of our so-called independence. He, and they're referring to King George here, has excited domestic insurrections against us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. The audacity. I mean, that paragraph tells you everything you need to know about how the Founding Fathers viewed this land that did not belong to them whatsoever. It speaks volumes about the white supremacist reasoning behind the founding of this nation. The people who lived and thrived in harmony with this land for thousands of years before these palm-colored entrepreneurs ever knew anything about a tomato, who have a greater claim to this land than the people who came to inhabit it. The only difference being that the Native Americans didn't have the hubris to claim actual ownership of a piece of the planet. And now those people who were here first are viewed as inhabitants of our frontiers. I mean, this paragraph alone is evidence enough to damn the 4th of July as a date that should not really be celebrated in any way, shape, or form. Self-evident truths clearly did not apply to all men in this case. So moving on from this huge topic, which is one we'll definitely revisit in the future, there's so much history and so many current events still affected by this history. There was another group of people living here at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and that was Black people, who were largely enslaved at that time legally under a system of chattel slavery. There is no doubt that the self-evident truths that all men were free to pursue happiness and were supposed to be living under liberty did not apply to Black Americans at the time, nor would it for nearly a century beyond that time. 70 years after the Declaration of Independence was written, Frederick Douglass made his famous "What to a Slave is the 4th of July" speech. And he was addressing a group of white women. It was the Rochester Anti-Slavery Women's Society in New York. Neighbors are making a bit of noise. It distracted me for a second. During this speech, Douglass pointed out that he was not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary, and that our, white people's, high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not me. These were his words. And the 4th of July is yours, which would be ours, and not his. And this was something that was never really rectified. It was never rectified. And to this day, people such as myself continue to benefit in a myriad of ways in society, in a society in which we have always had citizenship, we have always had rights, and it shows. Whereas Black Americans are still prone to suffer from oppressions of systemic racism that have never been rectified. It doesn't take a genius to do the math and find that if an entire group of people were legally enslaved for 90 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed, that we are not celebrating freedom for all. So the bottom line for me, and I'm someone who grew up celebrating the 4th of July every year without giving it a second thought. What? Sorry, Richard's adjusting my movement here. I grew up celebrating it without ever giving it a second thought. It was just about fireworks and barbecue. And once I met and ended up marrying my husband, I started to learn a little bit more about this country that we live in and how it is run and how everyone is not the same under the eyes of the law, even today in 2023. I mean, you have a huge group of people that are still legally enslaved in this country, thanks to the 13th Amendment, people that are imprisoned. There's still slave labor in this country. There are still plantations in this country. There's redlining. There are so many ways in which that independence that a large group of us just continue to take for granted has never been extended fully to many groups of people in this country. So for these reasons, I think we need to do away with the 4th of July, or at least completely change it from a day of celebration to a day of remembrance and reckoning with our actual history in this country. And I think that Juneteenth should be the new day that we celebrate some greater level of freedom for a larger number of Americans. And yeah, I think that's my thoughts for the day on this subject. So with that, I will bid you adieu to this music written by a very racist man. It's a horrible song, actually. What? He did a silly remix. Hope y'all have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Andy out!